this year who've been working very hard. It's about midway between the two piers. It's near a big red double-decker bus by that rotating thingamajig that people are sitting on. They have, I believe, tried to organise a Vulcan wave when she arrives. So if you're involved in that, she'll be arriving from the left, from the east. So the Vulcan wave will be, we hope that'll materialise. I should also say, before we start, that we're immensely grateful for the help of people getting her here. Vulcan's sponsored by Adrian Gunner of Merley House, and the Air Festival patron, Lord Stephen Young of Westbury, and of course, the sterling fundraising efforts of the Vulcan to the Sky Club, which I mentioned, Maggie Keat in particular. You may have heard her on the television channel earlier today. So, I suppose what I should say really is welcome to the very last flying season of a British aeroplane that represents the very best imaginative, thinking out of the box virtues of aeronautical design and engineering. Indeed, she represents the very best of the great British people. Hope you're getting ready for the Vulcan wave, by the way. And if this is your only air show of the year, it'll probably be the last time you'll ever see her. She is, of course, the rock star of the aviation world. Single most popular aeroplane in the country. We've already covered that. But she's the people's aeroplane. She has painted on her nose the spirit of Great Britain. And you wonderful people love her so much that you've given, in one way or another, more than £22 million to get her where she is today. I'm going to shut up now because she's going to appear before us. Avro Vulcan XH-558. Just a little touch on the throttles there from Phil O'Dell, the man actually flying the display today, a Bournemouth man, more about that later, but a touch on the throttles of the 4 Rolls-Royce Bristol Olympus 202 turbojets. 16,500 pounds of static thrust from each of them, about 65,000 pounds in total. So the two pilots then, Phil O'Dell and Kev Rumins. Phil O'Dell, Bournemouth man, moved to Bournemouth at the age of 7. Wilton Boys School, does that make him an old Wiltonian? His mum still lives here, and he learned to fly at the Bournemouth Flying Club. He's now the chief test pilot for Rolls-Royce, and he's flying the Vulcan today as we watch. A little spiral climb there, and she'll be coming back down again. One of the problems with Vulcan, and particularly in this format, she's lost so much weight since she left the Air Force with all the military equipment. And I should say also the removal of 2 navigators makes quite a big difference to the weight of an aeroplane. I speak as an ex-navigator, so I'm allowed to say that. Anyway, there she is with her wheels down. Obviously she's not intending to land anywhere very near here, but we do get to see her with the wheels down. She has 18 of them, 16 on the main undercarriage and 2 on the nose wheel. And as she comes by the next time, I expect to see the gear coming up. She's making a sort of an approach as if she were coming in to land, but then to make it into a go-around. The RAF's had Vulcans since 1956. They were designed to carry the British nuclear deterrent. This was one of the aeroplanes that protected us against the awful possibility of nuclear holocaust. We did really believe that it might happen any time. And there you see, as maneuverable as a fighter, she doesn't have the kind of control yoke, the big steering wheel that most bombers have. She has a fighter control column for each of the pilots. And she really is extremely agile. The test pilots used to roll her at the Farnborough Air Show. I was talking to a very distinguished one last week at Eastbourne, and he remembered rolling her off the top in public at the Farnborough Air Show. But they were stopped from doing that because another competitor company didn't like it. There are the bomb doors opening. The bomb bay is open. As she flies away from us, she'll keep the bomb bay open. You'll see them closing as she comes back in front of us. That's the enormous bomb bay, capable of carrying 21 1,000-pound bombs. And indeed, that was the bomb load that A. Vulcan carried all the way down to the Falkland Islands in 1982. It was the longest bombing raid in history, and she dropped all 21 of those 1,000-pound bombs on the runway at Port Stanley, then occupied by the Argentines. Hit the runway with 2 of them, and that was par for the course. These are basically wartime bombs, no guidance, no clever stuff there. They were just dumb bombs, and you expected to hit. If you hit with 2, that was the object achieved. That's why you took so many, and in fact it did knock the runway out for a while. Possibly more importantly, it told the Argentines that if necessary, the RAF could reach their mainland. So as she comes back in front of us, you'll see the bomb bay closing. All it carries now is the names of hundreds and hundreds of people who've contributed to keeping Vulcan in the air. Third man of the crew today is the Air Electronics Officer, Phil Davies. He's the man who was doing that bomb door opening and closing. He's more like an engineer in some other aircraft, because this is a highly electric aeroplane, often known as the electric bomber. Perfect picture of the high wing over there against those clouds. What a beautiful backdrop to have this wonderful aeroplane displaying in front of us. But, as we say, this is going to be the last time she'll display here. And why is that happening? Well, 3 technical authority companies will finally bring her flying life to a close. BAE Systems, Rolls-Royce and Marshall Aerospace. They've decided they can't continue to support her after this season, and without their support she loses her civil permit to fly. She becomes illegal. It's nothing to do with funding, nor about the supply of parts. Doesn't that just make your heart beat a bit stronger? So, we're almost at the end of the display. She's still being enjoyed by more than 3 million people every year. And of course, that includes lots of children and young people. They're inspired by Vulcan to learn more about engineering and aviation, and that's what she's going to be doing, as I was saying earlier. I should also mention, having said who's on board, somebody who's not on board is Taft Stone, the crew chief and the engineer, who with his staff of 7 daily works wonders to keep this magnificent old aeroplane flying still all these years later. She is actually 55 years old, this particular aeroplane, and it's 8 years since she flew again, so 558. So Taft Stone and his merry people do an absolutely wonderful job. So, I believe this will be the final pass of Vulcan XH-558. Bye-bye, rock star.